There's a bag of chips you already know. Party size, bright and loud, the one that shows up when the game's on and nobody's really counting. You grab it off the shelf without reading a single word on the front because you've been buying it since you were 14 and it has never once let you down. Same bag, same price you half remember, same little rush when you pull it open. That bag is one of the last things in your week you don't have to think about. And that's a nice feeling. Trusting something enough to stop checking it. Here's the part you didn't notice. In early 2022, that party-size bag quietly went from 9.75 ounces to 9.25 ounces. Half an ounce, gone. According to the company itself, that's about 5 chips lifted out of every bag. A 5% cut. And the price on the shelf largely stayed put. Nobody announced it. There was no press release, no warning sticker, no apology tucked into the corner. The bag looked exactly the same sitting in your hand. That is the entire trick, and it is running right now, in plain sight, in almost every aisle you walk past. The move is almost insultingly simple. Costs go up. Maybe it's cooking oil, maybe it's cardboard, maybe it's wages or shipping. A company has 2 ways to protect its money. It can raise the price and let you see it, or it can leave the price alone and quietly take some of the product out. And here's why they almost always pick the second one. When the price goes up, you notice instantly. Your eyes go straight to that number because you've got it memorized, and a higher number feels like a small betrayal. But when the bag holds 4% less, you feel nothing, because you were never tracking the ounces. You were tracking the price. The package is designed to help them. It's the same height on the shelf, the same color, the same logo, in the same spot. Sometimes the bag stays the exact same size and just gets a little more air pumped into it. You're not comparing this bag to last year's bag. You've got one of them right now in your hand, and it looks fine. So the change lands in the one blind spot your brain reserves for things it has decided are safe. Once you know the shape of it, you can't stop finding it. Chocolate is the famous one. Back in 2016, the maker of Toblerone in the UK widened the gaps between those triangle peaks, so the bar looked about the same length but weighed less. A 400-gram bar dropped to 360. People noticed that one because you could literally see the daylight between the chunks, and they were furious. It became a small national scandal, the kind of thing that ends up on the evening news with a reporter holding 2 bars side by side. But here's what's actually interesting about it. The only reason anyone caught it was that the shape changed. If they'd just made the whole bar a little shorter and kept the peaks tight together, most people would never have said a single word. The outrage wasn't really about the missing chocolate. It was about being able to see the missing chocolate. Walk to the freezer aisle and there's a quieter one that nobody got angry about at all. A generation ago, ice cream came in a half-gallon. 64 ounces. Then, across a lot of brands, that same-looking carton slimmed to a quart and a half. 48 ounces. A quarter of your ice cream evaporated, and the carton barely changed shape on the shelf. You reached for the same spot in the freezer, saw the same lid, paid roughly the same money, and carried home 3/4 of what your parents used to buy, and you never felt a thing. And yes, I can hear you mentally walking through your own kitchen right now, squinting at the cereal box. Go ahead. Check. I'll wait. It's the orange juice that went from 64 ounces to 59. That weird, not quite a half-gallon carton that exists for no reason except that it used to be a nice round number and isn't anymore. It's the cereal box that got thinner, front to back, so it still stands tall on the shelf and fills the same slot in your cupboard. It's the roll of paper towels where the sheets got a little narrower, so the roll is the same fat cylinder, but you tear through it in half the time. It's the can of tuna that used to be 6 ounces and is quietly 5. It's the tub of yogurt, the jar of peanut butter with the dimple pushed a little deeper into the bottom, the bag of coffee that slid from a full pound to 12 ounces, and then, a couple years later, to 11.5. And it's the toilet paper, where the roll looks the same but the sheets got shorter or thinner, or there are just fewer of them wound around the tube. None of these made the news. There was no reporter holding up 2 rolls. They just happened, quietly, one product at a time, in the years you weren't looking. Now here's the sneakier cousin, and once you meet it, you'll trust nothing. It's called skimpflation, a term a Planet Money reporter helped put on the map back in 2021. Shrinkflation takes stuff out of the package. Skimpflation leaves the package alone and makes what's inside cheaper. Same weight, worse product. The cookie that has noticeably fewer chocolate chips than it used to. The soup that's a little more water and a little less chicken. The moisturizer that quietly swapped a premium ingredient for a cheaper filler. The chocolate bar that kept its exact weight but dropped a few percent of actual cocoa for something cheaper, so it tastes a touch waxier than the one you grew up on. And here's why skimpflation is the harder one to catch. With shrinkflation, at least there's a number on the package that changed. The ounces are printed right there if you ever bothered to look. But the recipe, the quality of what's inside, that's not on the label in any way you can compare year to year. There is no line that says 10% less cocoa than in 2019. You just have a vague feeling that it used to be better, and then you talk yourself out of it, because who honestly trusts their memory of what a cookie tasted like 4 years ago? That doubt is doing the company's work for them. It's not just food either. Skimpflation is the hotel that stopped doing daily housekeeping and started calling it a favor to the planet. It's the flight where the legroom shrank an inch, the free snack turned into a purchase, and the checked bag grew a fee, all while the ticket said the same price. It's the customer service line where the human got replaced by a menu that loops you back to the start. Same room rate, same fare, less of the actual thing you thought you were paying for. The roll got bigger. The tube in the middle also got bigger. You are technically paying for more cardboard. So it's not always that you're getting less product in a smaller box. Sometimes you're getting the same amount of something worse, and the label never says a word about it. Shrinkflation. You can measure if you're paranoid enough to read the fine print. Skimpflation, you basically have to taste, and by the time you can taste it, you've already bought it, taken it home, and put it in the cupboard next to last year's better version that you no longer have to compare it to. So why does this work on smart people every single time? Because of something behavioral economists call a reference price. For anything you buy regularly, your brain quietly stores one number, roughly what this thing should cost. Not the weight, not the count, the price. When you reach for that bag of chips, you're not doing math. You're checking the sticker against the number in your head. And if it matches, you relax and move on. That stored number is the guard at the door, and it's only ever watching for one thing. And think about what your brain chose to remember there. Out of everything about that product, the size, the weight, the ingredients, the actual number of chips inside, it filed away the price and threw the rest away. That's not stupid, by the way. It's efficient. You buy hundreds of different things. You cannot audit the net weight of every single one of them every week, or you would never make it out of the store. So your brain picks the one signal that's easiest to track, the price, and it quietly trusts that everything sitting behind that price stays constant. Shrinkflation is just what happens when a company realizes that trust is a door somebody left unlocked. There's a second quirk stacked right on top of it. It's called left digit bias. A price that goes from $2.99 to $3.19 feels like a real jump, because the first digit changed from a 2 to a 3, and your brain reacts to that leading digit far more than the actual 20 cents could ever justify. But that exact same 20 cents, going from $3.29 to $3.49, barely registers at all because the 3 out front stayed put. Companies have understood this for a century. It is precisely why so many prices end in 99. That whole familiar game exists because your attention to price is loud and jumpy and just a little bit irrational. Now put the two things together. Your attention to price is a twitchy guard dog that overreacts to the leftmost digit. Your attention to quantity is basically asleep in the corner. So a firm facing higher costs is really just choosing between two doors. Behind one door is the twitchy dog, the price, and it barks the instant you nudge it. Behind the other door is the sleeping one, the quantity, and it won't so much as stir if you slip 5 chips out of the bag. Put it that way, and the surprise isn't that shrinkflation happens. The surprise is that any company ever raises a sticker price at all. Every single time one of them does raise the number instead of shrinking the bag, they are choosing on purpose to go wake the dog. Which brings us to the argument everybody had during the inflation years from about 2021 through 2024, and it's worth being careful here because it's genuinely contested. The polite story is simple. Costs rose, so companies shrank packages to survive. Costs went up, products went down, everybody's just staying afloat. But then people looked at the profits, and some economists, including researchers at the IMF and the European Central Bank, found that in parts of 2022, rising corporate profits accounted for a meaningful chunk of inflation, not just rising costs. In other words, some of it looked less like survival and more like opportunity. Prices and packages were changing under cover of a moment when everyone already expected them to. But I have to be honest with you, because this channel doesn't do villains with mustaches. Other serious economists push back hard. They argue most of it really was costs and tangled supply chains passing through, and that profit margins came back down to earth once things calmed. The truth is somewhere in the fog. Some of the shrinking was defense. Some of it, quite possibly, was a company glancing over at the door, noticing the guard was distracted and helping itself. Here's the part that should actually bother you, more than any single missing ounce. It doesn't come back. When a company's costs finally ease, when oil gets cheap again and the shipping unclogs, the bag does not quietly refill. The smaller size just becomes the new normal, the new starting point for next time. That's why people call it a ratchet. It only turns one way. So the reductions stack on top of each other. A little off in 2022, a little more skimped in 2023, another quiet tweak the year after. And every one of them is measured against the shrunken version right before it. Never against the generous bag you actually remember from years ago. Your memory reset a little each time, right along with the package, so you never got to feel the full drop all at once. There are exceptions, and I owe you the honest one. After that Toblerone backlash, the UK version eventually went back to a bigger bar. But that took a public uproar loud enough to genuinely embarrass a corporation, and that kind of thing is rare. For the vast majority of quiet cuts, nobody is watching closely enough for anyone to be embarrassed. Which means the size you're holding today isn't a low point you'll bounce back from. It's the most you will ever get again. So how do you fight something built from the ground up to be invisible? There's one number that cuts straight through all of it, and depending on where you live, the store may already be required to print it. They just make it small. It's the unit price, not the price of the package. The price per ounce, per 100 grams, per sheet. That tiny figure on the shelf label, off to the side, in the font nobody reads. When a bag shrinks but the price holds, the sticker on the front tells you absolutely nothing, but the unit price quietly climbs, and unlike the front of the package, it cannot lie to you. In most of Europe and the UK, showing that per unit price is broadly required, which is exactly why it's the single most useful habit you can build. In the United States, it's patchier. There's no federal rule, just a handful of states like New York and Massachusetts that mandate it. So depending on your aisle, you may have to hunt for it, or just do the division yourself. Now, almost nobody bans shrinkflation outright, because technically nothing dishonest ever happened. The weight was printed on the package the whole time. But France tried something clever. As of July 2024, larger French supermarkets have to post a notice right there on the shelf when a product got smaller and pricier per unit, spelling out the change in plain language, in the same size font as the price itself. It doesn't outlaw the trick. It just drags it into the light and makes the store say it out loud. And a trick only really works in the dark. So step back, and here's what you're actually looking at. When people picture inflation, they picture prices marching up on a sign. Big numbers, loud numbers, the kind that make the news. But a good amount of it never reaches you through the front of the label at all. It reaches you through the back of the package, through the ounce that vanished, the sheet that got shorter, the chip that simply never got made. It's real inflation. It's just wearing a disguise, because a company would always rather you feel nothing than feel a price hike. And feeling nothing is the entire point. That's why this is worth understanding. Not to make you miserable in the snack aisle, but because the price on the shelf was only ever telling you half the story. The number you guard so carefully was never the thing that mattered most. The thing that mattered was quietly leaving the bag, 1 ounce at a time, while you weren't looking. So next time you grab that bright red bag off the shelf, give it a shake first. If it rattles like mostly air holding a few chips hostage, now you know exactly who took the other 5. But a shrinking bag of chips is just the small, clumsy cousin of a much bigger idea. A business engineered so you lose a little every time and never quite feel it go. And nobody has perfected that quiet machine like the casino. Every carpet, every light, every game on that floor is built so the house always wins. Not by luck, by design. I took that entire machine apart piece by piece in the video on your screen right now. If a chip bag made you look twice, this will make you look twice at a whole industry. Go watch it.